The camera's on, everybody. Oh wait, he's calling me right now. Hello. Hi. It's me. Oh, he just said I don't have anybody's phone number. So I'm fine. I'll call him. So sorry, I wasn't. He fell asleep. Let's just go. Let's just start. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Make sure the mic's on. Is it on? Good evening, everyone. Welcome.
We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Vinnie Lees. Thank you. Please rise. We know you remember the words.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's correct.
Commissioner Alton,
Present.
Commissioner Markowitz,
Present.
Commissioner Lees,
Present.
Commissioner Brooks,
Present.
Commissioner Alvarado, Commissioner Di Pasquale,
Present.
Chairman Morelli. Commissioner Alvarado and Chairman Morelli are absent. Let the record indicate the presence of Assistant Corporation Counsel Joseph Lupo. Case number 3441, application of William Gordon of 96 Dalton Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the City of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.8B height, 9-105.8D side yard, for a house liquid side yard additions at 96 Dalton Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 182, Lot 1, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Matter.
Before we start, I'm going to have to recuse myself on this one. I'm a neighbor.
You just have to step off the dais. Sorry. We're good. So just give your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Monty Leeper, architect, located at 414 Foxhurst Road in Oceanside.
So tell us about the project, Mr. Lieber.
Well, William Gordon, who resides at 96 Dalton, is requesting variance from zoning code section 9-105.8B for the proposed height of 26 feet 6 inches, where 23 feet is the required maximum, a difference of 3 feet 6 inches due to the proposed lifting of the residence for flood mitigation. The second request is relief from the side yard requirement under section 9-105.8D, where the proposed side yard is interpreted to be 0 when 20 feet is required. The subject property, as depicted in the survey, is really 17.29 feet from Reynolds Channel. William Gordon owns the northerly parcel abutting directly on the north border of his larger parcel along Reynolds Channel. With both parcels of land, the side yard setback of 0 feet is not as it appears in this instance. The reason for the variance request of 0 feet is because, as it was explained to me, William Gordon's original parcel has a north boundary of the City of Long Beach, and the land extending the additional approximately 17.29 feet is the town of Hempstead, from which he purchased the property. There is 17.29 feet of land belonging to William Gordon between the Long Beach part of his property and Reynolds Channel. With no neighbors to the north of the property due to the vast distance across Reynolds Channel, the side yard of 0 feet has a minimal impact on the neighbors or the surrounding neighborhood. The reason for the side yard variance is due to the proposed addition of a deck at the raised first floor, which now becomes the second floor. The deck is currently on level stepping down from the first floor elevation onto the north side yard, which is treated more like a typical backyard with seating, a barbecue, and a table. The raised deck becomes the outdoor accessible place to dine and take advantage of the outdoors and views adjacent to the raised kitchen, dining, and living room spaces. The deck is part of the accessibility issue since William's brother, Adam, who lives in another house in Long Beach, is in a wheelchair and will also be able to access the deck because William is making the entire home accessible to his brother by installing an elevator. I have been impressed through this design process that someone would go through such efforts to install an elevator for his brother not to feel excluded. Also, by the accessibility of the deck, we allow for current and future needs. The Gordons have owned and resided in the single-family home since March of 2021. They realized that the flooding conditions were an issue they were going to need to address, as photos show. The first floor was flooded during the storm Sandy. My task was to make the residents New York State and FEMA compliant, which meant raising the dwelling. It will now be compatible with the many other lifted homes on Dalton Street and surrounding blocks, with an accessible front entry at the ground level and usable lower level space indoors and out. The height request is warranted and not unusual. Photos of the surrounding homes on Dalton Street show the similarity of the proposed house lift height. So the deck at the second floor level adds function to the dwelling and allows the large side yard at the ground level to remain as open outdoor space. The second floor deck makes the raised living floor area more functional with easy access to an outdoor space up above the ground and easy access to the ground level from the deck. The deck stairs are directed to the rear. Oh, wait a second. You ready? To the rear portion of the yard, so that the larger portion of the rear yard is more open and remains more flexible to access and use. The area under the deck has a substantial head clearance of 8 feet 6 inches, taller than a standard ceiling of 8 feet, and allows for part of the open yard to be shaded. With the summer heat and stronger sunlight due to the more severe changes in our weather patterns, the shaded area is a benefit to the extended use of the yard in extreme sun conditions. The deck provides a place of refuge if another storm episode happens, such as hurricane or flood, both of which have struck Long Beach in the recent past. Having a place to move items from the yard, to set up a generator, or gather for rescue in a storm or fire is a very realistic need. As a nationally certified disaster assessment professional, recognized by FEMA and certified through the state of California, the strictest code venue in the country, I can personally testify that the designed place of refuge has saved many lives, and I have included this feature in many homes across the South Shore, including several homes in Long Beach. The deck will be finished with safe handrails and is designed to be structurally sound and to resist flooding and high winds in conformity with the New York State and Federal Emergency Management Agency requirements. The owners do not smoke, will not play loud music, will not hold loud parties on the deck, and want to assure the board here tonight that they are sensitive to those living around them and will continue to be good neighbors.
Okay.
The deck will restrict the access of emergency personnel or equipment to the yard, will not block sunlight to adjacent properties, and will not be a detriment to the neighboring properties or surrounding environs. For all these reasons, William Gordon respectfully requests that the variances be granted. That's our case.
So on the, just a question on the bay side, that deck has always been there, you're saying? This side yard is actually the bay side, correct?
Yes, there was a deck much smaller at the upper level.
Okay, but there was a deck on the ground level, but it was probably too low to be violating any code, right?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Now that it's being elevated, it's becoming a side yard issue, right?
That's correct. It's actually a paver patio
Okay.
with steps leading to the paver patio. It wasn't really a deck.
All right.
And with respect to the height variance, is that, excuse me, I'm sorry, is that ordered to accommodate parking at ground level, at grade?
Definitely, yes. We want to keep cars off the street. It's also at the end of the block, so it's a little harder. parking, so keeping cars off the street was important. By the way, the cars are also with the garage. If you're looking at the elevations on sheet number 4, the garage is at a height that also keeps it above most flooding that we've had recently.
Okay. So the garage is under living space.
I'm sorry?
The garage,
Is,
I'm sorry.
it's under living space.
It's under
Yeah,
living
I see that
space.
right here.
Yes.
And what's the remaining first floor going to be? Is it the rest of that floor?
It'll be storage. It may be used as overflow if they decide to have people over, but it's intended to be indoor and outdoor space.
Okay.
It's not considered to be habitable,
Okay.
except the foyer, the entry foyer, and that's so that we can get the wheelchair access to the elevator.
Okay. The elevator is in this plan somewhere? I guess?
Elevator is at the rear of the foyer, from the first floor to the top floor.
I see it right there, yeah. I don't have any questions. Any other members of the board have any questions? No. Anybody in the audience like to speak in favor? Anyone like to speak against? Okay, no comments. Anybody want to make a motion on this?
I make a motion to grant.
Second?
Second.
Case number 3441, application of William Gordon of 96 Dalton Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance from the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.8D height, 9-105.8D side yard, for a house lift with side yard additions at 96 Dalton Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 182, Lot 1, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map. Commissioner Brooks has introduced a motion to grant the application. Commissioner Markowitz has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alden?
Grant.
Commissioner Markowitz?
Grant.
Commissioner Leese?
Grant.
Commissioner Brooks?
Grant.
This application has been granted.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Okay. On to number 2. Case number 3442, application of James Darianzo of 202 Bayview Avenue, Massapequa, New York, for a variance in the following sections of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-105.111C lot area, 9-105.11E front yard, 9-105.111F side yard, 9-105.111G rear yard, 9-113.2G off-street parking design standards, 9-113.2H off-street parking design standards to increase the size of the existing two-family structure at 529 East Broadway, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 174, Lot 154, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Hello, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, good evening. Charles Schwartzapfel, 889. Schwartzapfel, 889 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York. There you go. Good evening, Chairman and Board. I'm here to represent my client who is requesting what we read into the record, all of the variances request at 529 East Broadway. Property is a pre-existing two-family residence with a non-habitable garage in the rear. Right now, it is 2 one-bedroom apartments with 2 parking spaces. The request for variance for the lot coverage of 5,000 feet for allowable 6,000 square feet is a pre-existing lot that we can't do anything with. The front yard setback, that is a required 10-foot setback that states that we have a 2.5-foot front yard setback, is with reference to the staircase and the planter, not to the building structure. The rear yard setback, or I'm sorry, the side yard setback, which is calling for parking spaces that we're asking for within the side yard. The request I'll show with it. Right now, with the 2 parking spaces we have, there are existing curb cuts at the curb that allow for have the parking or car access on the east and on the west side of the property. The rear yard setback of 20 feet required, which is now an existing 1.2-foot setback, is for the independent, non-habitable accessory structure. All of these setbacks are pre-existing, non-conforming, non-compliant conditions that we have no intention of changing or exacerbating in what we want to do. What we're looking to do now is, after coming to the board, and we now would like to, when my client has reconsidered the evaluation of the property and is in consideration that he would like to own or occupy it, and he'd like to make the non-habitable rear garage or storage space that it was, and combine it and attach it to the existing first floor apartment, and then occupy it with his wife. He'd like to do this for, his intent is for the summer occupancy. By attaching the 200 and some odd square foot connection and making that a master suite in the rear, it'll enable him to downsize and to occupy the property. Right now, even though we're requesting 5 parking spaces, the request for the variance would be for 2 additional parking spaces, because the requirement for the code is 1.75 spots for each unit, which is 3.5 spots, and we don't have a half a car space. I believe that our request would be of no change to the character of the existing community, to that street. In particular, I have a few photos from Google Maps where every piece of parcel along the property or along East Broadway have all the car. If I could present this to the board, you could see it, that all the properties, I have one copy, that all of the residents have side yard parking. They're all front yard parking, and there are some tandem spots as there are pre-existing. I'd ask that you reconsider these variance requests so that my client can move and occupy here in Long Beach.
Yeah, just for the sake of clarity for the record, I just want to point out to the board that this property was heard in December of 2023. At that time, the homeowner was seeking a variance to, pretty much for us to permit the accessory structure to remain an apartment. This case is before the Long Beach City Court right now for an illegal apartment in that accessory structure. I think the hard sell here is now the fact that it's being alleged that it'll be owner-occupied over the summer, to go from South Shore, Long Island, Massapequa to South Shore, Long Island, Long Beach. We're going to create a hallway there, but we promise we're not going to make it an illegal apartment. I think that's the hard sell here. But please, if any other members of the board have...
Can I comment on that?
Well,
of course.
Can I comment on that? Maybe I
Please.
misrepresented. He's not looking to occupy for the summer. He's looking to downsize and occupy. When we were here to originally request the accessory structure to be legalized for a third family, at that point, when the conversation was that the board did not want to address or to approve separate accessory structures for individuals, I guess, apartments, there was a reconsideration. At that point, he vacated the space. It's no longer an occupied space.
Okay.
I don't know the status of what's pending on the, in the court. My client can address that if need be. But at that point, after looking at it and reevaluating, we thought the best use of the property was for them to come and occupy, not for the summer, but to become year-round. And that's what the conversation was. It's empty. We would remove that kitchen, I believe, and then just leave it as a bathroom master suite, have that connection as a type of family room, and occupy that way. So it's would abandon or remove or adjourn the court proceeding of what was a violation is no longer a violation. And I just wanted to clarify that.
So it's for your client, Mr. D'Arienzo, is proposing full-time residence in Long Beach.
Correct.
Okay, maybe I misheard.
Okay, thank you. Because in doing that, the house will go up on the market, and he would need the extra space for him and his wife. Yes, that was the reevaluation of the value of the property, and then renovate that first floor.
Another question I have is that this originally was a garage.
On the C of O prior to, yes, it was, I
It was
assume,
built as
when
a
it was
garage.
originally built, it was built as a garage
Had all the
many,
characteristics of a
decades ago.
garage With a long driveway going to it.
Correct.
It's been converted to a living space right now, correct?
That was converted prior to my,
Yeah, but it is, it's converted,
it
right?
has been converted to a
Does it
living
have
space.
plumbing and electric and all the requirements for a
Yes.
separate living space? It does? And
I don't know if it meets code for ventilation and light. I know my documents will bring it to code for ventilation and for.
And are all those changes that have been made to the structure signed off, enclosed, permitted?
We haven't done any of those. We haven't done any of those.
So none of that's been done?
Updated improvements that we are
Okay.
specifying and we are
So right now,
proposing.
there are illegal installations in it at this time.
There are presently illegal installations in it that my client was going to remove, and I believe the building department said to hold to do anything till pending here, because then he would either clean it up or ideally like to renovate that with the first floor.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
You go ahead.
Yeah. So, Mr. Lupo already cleared up you guys visiting us before on the zoning board, and when you said the storage space, it was really an illegal apartment, which is currently being dealt with. But in regards to the two-family home, I see that with the addition doing the hallway, what would stop the landlord, the property owner, just from closing off the staircase that leads to the main part of the house and just putting this back to an illegal apartment, making a three-family house instead of a two-family house, just based on what has been brought before us? Prior.
His occupancy.
All right, so I have a couple of questions. You said he presently lives in Massapequa, correct?
I didn't say that. I believe I believe that Mr. Lupo did. But
Does-
he is presently has a
Massapequa.
residence in Massapequa.
Okay. And he's not put his house up for sale? He's waiting for this? Is that the thing?
He's waiting to occupy here. He will put that up for sale if he gets this granted, because this way, he's not going to put it up for sale and move to here, or do the construction here to know that he's going to be proceeding that way.
So him putting up for sale is subject to this variance, not the other way around?
I don't have that answer. I'm certain that my client can
Well,
testify
he
to that.
hasn't put it up for sale, correct? He's still
That's
living in
correct.
Massapequa,
He's
right?
living in, that's correct. He's still living in Massapequa.
Right.
And
And
we
he
are-
hasn't put it up for sale?
You can tell me, is it on the market yet? Is it on the market? Yes. So,
You have to give your name and address for the record if you'd like to speak.
well,
Go
you
to
have
the
to say here, but I
microphone. So
don't know
the-
if that was.
Go to the microphone so everyone can hear you.
Sorry, my house is not on the market, nor will it be on the market until, hopefully, we get this approved, because obviously, I can't move into a one-bedroom house. I need at least 2 bedrooms. We don't have enough storage at this place. We want to downsize in the future. But there's not enough space in this house currently right now.
So you want to downsize, but there's not enough space? Is that what you're saying?
If you look at the square footage of the house, it's only a 1-bedroom. There's 1 bath in it. It has a little family room in the front where he proposed. Yeah, okay, so, no, it's a 4-bedroom home where I live right now.
So it's a 4-bedroom house?
I have a 4-bedroom house. I have
Present.
3 bathrooms. I'm not looking to take everything that's in that house. I need to downsize. I'm eventually going to retire. I don't need a large house in Massapequa. I want to be down here. I want to be on the boardwalk. My wife wants to walk on the boardwalk. We want to go to the beach. Our friends and family could come down here. It's a big draw for us to be down here. I just want a simpler life, but I don't need that much room.
No,
But I don't want to put my house on the market and then say, we're going to come down here and live in a house, and then we're not going to get approved for the space. It's too tight there.
I understand, but couldn't you put your house on the market in Massapequa, put this house on the market, you combine the monies and then buy another house?
You're talking a lot more money, then I got to pay capital gains on everything too, because if you look at it from the standpoint that this is an investment home, if I put that on the market, then I'm going to pay 1/3 in taxes on it. That wouldn't make sense. I might as well just go, because I've been living in my other house for 20 years. I take the whole lump sum. I could take the money down there. I could throw money in the bank. I could be in this community, and I could live a very simple life.
I understand, but what I didn't understand is
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to continue to live in Massapequa subject to us granting the variance. So
If-
you're not putting your house on the market to move, you'll do it if we grant the variance.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all I want to know. Thank you.
And what's the makeup,
Yes, that's right. To move here.
And you-
That's the whole purpose.
And you
I mean,
said-
I don't want to jump ahead and sell my house and then, where am I?
I understand.
and you said the makeup was, you were going to be moving into a one-bedroom, so the makeup of this house, the second floor has how many bedrooms in it?
There's only one bedroom, and I know it shows it as a 3-bedroom.
All right, so the second floor has one bedroom, and
One
what about
bedroom.
the first
Currently,
floor?
one bedroom. There's
It's
nothing.
an
more.
open, it's more open space. It was probably more bedrooms once upon a time, but they probably
Yeah.
opened it.
So the first floor has how many bedrooms?
Right now, it only has one bedroom.
One
But
bedroom, and
having
the
that
second
space
floor?
in the back would turn into a master suite, which would keep us away from the road. I don't have to listen to road work. It's just a nicer environment.
So I've got a question, well, actually, I got a statement and a question for you. If you came to us and said you wanted an extension that's going to go to 1.5 feet to both property lines, it would probably get flatly denied, okay? And this ultimately would give you occupied house space that close to the boundary, which is how the garages were done, but the houses were never done that way, okay? Why wouldn't you consider, looking at this floor plan, just putting a bump-out extension on the back of the house and just leave that structure alone? That would probably not be a whole lot of money.
Look at the construction.
And then you could put a deck upstairs, which would make the second floor apartment, if you're keeping it that way, much more desirable.
It's an alternative.
It would be
I
a very
agree.
good alternative.
But then I'm getting more square footage the way we're doing it right now, because if we do where there's a deck in the back of the house right now, that converts to a family room. Then there's
You
it's
have
going
this
to be a
huge
one.
side yard, you know, it's not like you're losing your yard by considering that. I see that as a much more appealing option for the types of decisions we make here, because you're asking for your living quarters to go right to 1.5, right to the property line, pretty much. That's what that garage is doing. That's a tough call.
Well, when you say the property line, are you saying on my behalf, it would be
These
like...
original garages in Long Beach go like within inches to the property line, but they were garages, so there was always allowed. The houses were never built that way.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no.
So by connecting this to your house, we're pretty much giving you an allowance to extend your house right to the property line or a foot away from it.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. But you have this big side yard, you've got all these driveways, and you've got a nice big space between the house and the garage. It could probably be a back extension, which I've seen many times in this town, by the way, and it looks really nice. And you can put a deck upstairs, which makes that really appealing.
I agree with you.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
So really, in interpreting your suggestion and setting what it is, to not have the living space go all the way to the rear property line. I've done other projects that had other variances granted where we've had detached garages that are non-conforming, non-complying in residences, and we've combined them together where we didn't further exacerbate the actual variance or the actual encroachment. But that being said, if we took 2/3 of that existing garage non-habitable space and taking the bathroom and maybe putting it into that extension and the rear part of the property line, or I'm looking at whether it's an 18, 20-foot space, if we leave the rear part as storage, just trying to minimize construction costs and things to that effect. If the living space isn't going right to the property line, can we use that structure, and within this family room, proposed sitting room, we have a proposed storage room here. Can we make that the bathroom?
Partial storage.
So we'll leave the
plus
storage, so it
living.
doesn't run all the way, and we don't have windows there, and we could use some of this space so that it doesn't need it as a big garage. He's not gonna bring cars around and pull into it, because that is gonna bastardize the backyard. So a 20 by 20 garage storage space that's never gonna be used for cars or that kind of stuff can, perhaps there's a compromise that could be done, so understandably, he doesn't have living space right up against the property line. it has storage in there that he could put in. We could relocate the bathroom to the other side like that and put it in. I mean, there's room to manipulate this or to make it work if that's something that, you know, is a concern. I have other photos of other projects that I've done where we've connected zero lot line houses here in Long Beach, but I understand your position, and I mean, it can be done, and you don't have to cut into the property. It's not an unreasonable compromise and request for what they want to do. If that's a condition that was okay, yeah, you have the structure here. So this will be the storage, and put the bathroom here. And you still have a nice master suite, and you still have the,
Oh, you mean
this is, well, not cutting it, just not using it for habitable space.
Oh, you mean using the back portions?
Well, if it's, again, this is a suggestion, if you guys, if the board is amenable to it, is that?
Just a combination of things going on here between the property lines, the fact that there's some sort of a variance or a legal apartment out there that's in some sort of case on the other floor.
What's the status here? He can ask you the status on that.
I mean, putting it all together, I just think that the optics are really difficult for us to deal with right now. They really
And
are.
acceptable and understood.
And I do think you should come up with alternate plans to make this a little bit more compliant to the way things are done here. I mean, you know, these property lines just aren't acceptable for this part of the town, period.
Can you, please, I didn't hear. Can you
These
just repeat?
property lines of this garage, I mean, you know, splitting it up, I mean, honestly, enforcement will never be able to track if you just ignore that rule. We would never be able to do it, and we don't want to burden them with that. I'm just saying, I think you should try and come up with you've got all this big side yard here, you got a big space between the house, and I don't know why you wouldn't just consider that. Just go ahead and check it out. And your house isn't even for sale. I mean, you may change your mind when this thing's all through. I mean, what do we know? What's that? Is that?
It's the easiest route to take, it's just put the breezeway in it. I don't disturb, you know, opening up walls.
But you're gonna bring heat back there, it's a big deal, you know, and you got pipes going underground, you're gonna have to insulate and worry about
A lot of that
freezing.
is pre-existing.
Hmm?
That there was a pre-existing, non-complying illegal apartment for what it is that.
Take that one window out and put the breezeway in, and it's free.
Look, we need to, can we, well, let me hear, if are there any other
Any other comments?
optics that we need to comment before we try
questions?
to, because maybe we'll,
No?
you know, see if we could leave this.
Okay, anybody in the audience want to comment for? Anybody want to comment against?
For or against, ma'am, in opposition or in support? Oh, 1 second, does anybody want to speak in support of the project? Ma'am, please come up. Please just state your name and address for the record, please.
Sandy Mendez, 708 West Walnut. Sandy Mendez, 708 West Walnut.
Thank you.
I mean, I've been living in Long Beach for, I'm going to be 8 years now, and parking is really a hard thing. And I have parking, and I find that if you have the parking, you should keep it. The community needs a parking space with all these FEMA compliant buildings going up. I'm currently adjacent to something where I don't even know what's going to happen with this particular property, but it's just, the parking is horrendous. People park even in my driveway and cut me off. If you have a parking spot, I think it should be utilized for that, and if you need to expand on your property, find other modes in order to do that and conserve the parking spots.
Just so you know, ma'am, part of what they're proposing is to have 5 parking spaces, off-street parking spaces, on the property in the side yard. So I'm not sure.
But they're converting the garage
The
into
garage is not
living-
used currently for cars, but the driveway leading to it is usable.
Oh, okay,
Okay?
right. I can't see that because I don't see any
Okay, so
pictures.
that's, yeah, I don't think it would affect, I don't think the parking topic is the concern here.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Thank you. All right.
I would propose to the board to hold this case open for voting, to allow the applicant to submit amended plans if they so choose, and then
Thank you.
If the amended plans are submitted, obviously they're going to have to be reviewed by the building department again, which all can be done within the month.
Sure.
And then next meeting, we could reconvene and address.
Are we, do we have a December, is there a December hearing that,
A
as of
December
now, it's
meeting?
still,
Yeah.
do you know what the date is?
The 19th.
The 19th, okay. Can we hold it for, over till the 19th?
You can hold it open, and
Okay.
if you want to
It's the choice of the board,
consider
technically.
alternate plans that would maybe allow us to have more choices to work with you, then that would also be appealing, okay?
Will you have time on the judge?
Yeah, be a formal motion.
Because that court will be adjourned.
No. Just, if we're not voting, we're holding it open for voting.
Okay. Would it be,
If you're submitting revised plans, they have to be submitted to the building department first, so the building commissioner can review them and
Right.
advise the board of any changes. If you want to be reheard, it has to be renoticed. I need to know.
when is the
by-
January date? Because I'm going to need, I have a couple of things
Okay, so you want to
personally
be
that.
reheard? You want to be
We would like to
reheard,
be
or you want
reheard,
just them to hold the vote until January?
No, I'd like to, I think I'd like to be reheard because at that point, this court case will have been resolved and,
Oh,
and it won't be,
that would be helpful for us, too.
yeah, that seems like it's the key because
Yeah.
if we could clean up as much optics, then it is what it is and I respect.
Okay, so the
division.
January meeting is January 23rd. However, you do need to submit any sort of revised plans to the building department first. And your office prepared the notices, so I would need new notices, but don't do them until it's closer to the January meeting.
Great. 23rd hearing. Observe. You'll take care of your violation that'll be removed.
Okay.
Thank you for the consideration and respect. Happy
you.
holidays, Cole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Case number 3438, application of Rosa Rosa Peruvian Cuisine Bar of 78082 Hazel Place, Lynbrook, New York, and Arcadia Management of 770 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-106.14, new bar for a full-service bar with seating at 780 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 6, Lot 235, on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map.
Good evening.
Bless you.
It's okay.
I'm allergic to you, Kenny, I'm sorry.
Sorry. A lot of people are. Want me to step back a little?
Kenneth Apple, 30 West Park Avenue, Suite 202. On behalf of the applicant, Rosa Rosa, tonight. Tonight, we're before the board to seek approval for something that was already approved in the past, 38 years ago in front of the same zoning board. Nothing has, it was approved in the past 38 years ago in front of the same zoning board. I mean, different members, but the same zoning board. To share the history of this property, it was a fully granted variance back in 1996 for a full-service bar. The size of the bar has never changed. The owners have changed over the years, but it's been maintained as a restaurant, so it's never needed a change of use. The only reason we have to come to the zoning board tonight is because the city of Long Beach made a determination, correctly or incorrectly, that due to the fact that in their opinion, the business was not operating for 9 months prior to us purchasing the business. And we would have to come back and seek approval because it was deemed abandoned by the building department. Again, this was granted 38 years ago under case 1288, and nothing has changed. The size of the bar is exactly the same. The business was formerly the cafe. It was a troubled business and subject to an eviction proceeding, which I handled for the landlord. During the course of the proceeding, Mr. Fetcher, who's here tonight, who's a commercial broker, was employed by the tenant at the time who was being evicted to sell the business, which included fixtures and a new lease, and so on and so on. The applicants actively engaged in good faith negotiations with the prior tenant to attempt to pursue this location. Due to the fact that this took months of negotiations, the former tenant and the applicant, Rosa Rosa, the city court judge kept adjourning the trial date because every time the former tenant went to court, they said we're in negotiations. The judge kept adjourning the trial date. Henceforth, the negotiations started in April of '23. They didn't finish until August. And like I said, the judge kept pushing the trial date off. We would have loved to have evicted them in April and just leased to these guys and wouldn't have necessitated us appearing here. But the fact that the judge pushed off the trial date and the subsequent transaction took place in August, henceforth the 9 months. So the applicant ultimately purchased the business, paid $130,000 with no inkling that this variance would be required. The premise continued to have an active liquor license the entire time. Not that, again, that's an argument for a different playing field if we had to, but we felt it much easier to come to the zoning board than argue with the city about whether this was abandoned or not. So we're here tonight simply asking to open and operate this space as it's been operated for nearly 40 years. A little background about the applicant. It's a Peruvian restaurant. They have 2 locations, one in Brooklyn, one in Lynbrook. The owners and managing operators are Manny and Amanda. Amanda is going to be the primary operator of this location. She moved to the Barrier Island after her husband passed away. She has 2 children that both attend Long Beach Catholic School. She's a member of the community and sought to open a business in this town. This location became available, and they actively pursued it, like I said, with the former owner. The restaurant will be seeking a unique vibe. It's not going to be a bar. It's not going to be a watering hole. It's a 49-person occupancy. They're seeking that LB Social, Felicia's type of feeling. You come in, there's maybe going to be 10 tables to sit at. The bar is obviously of value. It was part of the purchase price. They expected to have it. It's not going to be a sports bar. There's one TV. It's really going to be primarily used for people coming to wait for takeout, or someone like myself that prefers to go and sit at the bar and have a meal and go home. The lease was negotiated by the landlord with the understanding that noise was they had to comply strictly with the noise. There's going to be no DJs. There's going to be no live music. Maybe they'll have acoustics every now and then. But there's residents upstairs, if you're familiar with this location. It's next to Sorrento's. Arcadia, who is the owner of the building, operates a management company next door, and there's actual residences upstairs that Arcadia leases. So part of the lease was they were real strict with the noise, and there can't be any noise issues with this premise. They've already begun to invest in the community. Jesus. They are engaging the Chamber of Commerce. Long Beach Catholic reached out to them to participate in the My Food Days, to have food for lunch for them. Their hours of operation, give or take, are primarily going to be 1 in the afternoon to 10 at night. Amanda, like I said, has 2 young children. She needs to get home. She plans to close this business anytime she's available to do so, and has no plans on staying open later, making this a bar of any sort. Again, it's going to be that LB Social Felicia's type vibe. It's going to be nice. It's going to be small. The occupancy is 49 people. 9 are probably employees. There are at least 40 people for a restaurant. And again, this is an established business, and we're targeting a small local crowd. I'd already said the variance became a complete surprise to them. They totally did not expect, nor should they have really anticipated that this was going to be an issue, because while this was going on, the liquor license for the cafe was still maintained and active. I believe the landlord, who couldn't be here tonight, wrote a letter to the zoning board. I'm assuming that was handed out. That kind of outlines the history of the property. As it was his family that initially opened up Chesapeake Bay when this variance was granted. So he's got a pretty good knowledge of the property. We planned to have him here tonight, but he's under the weather, so he apologizes. This will not change the neighborhood at all. It's a vacant store on a corner property. Nothing is going to be changed other than what's already been approved and used as for the last 38 years. We believe it's a substantial improvement, certainly if they have a business such as the ones I mentioned, where people are going to come and desire to come down here and eat and go home. Nobody's staying there drinking all night. I believe it's going to have a positive impact on the neighborhood. It's going to be another unique dining option for the residents, and it's going to complement Sorrento's pretty well. They're already in communication with Sorrento's. We did, through this process, receive feedback from the community originally, which was the reason we pushed this case off to this month. We met with everyone who wrote a letter in opposition initially, came to the restaurant. We sat with them. We had a conversation with them. They got to see exactly what we were doing. They met Amanda, they met Manny, they heard what we're doing, and the new bar scares everybody, but it's not a new bar. It's just the way it's issued on the denial letter. I believe we pulled off the feet since I received it in a FOIL. I believe the West End neighbors even changed their opposition to basically a letter of approval for this. So we look forward to opening up. You know, the longer we take to open, obviously, the longer we can't get our liquor license, you know, until this is all resolved. But I appreciate your time. Any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Mr. Fetcher is here to speak. He was the commercial broker. He'd like to say something regarding the facts. I believe, and I think he could testify to it more, our food alcohol ratio is going to be over 80% food. That's what we expect. again, we're planning on closing relatively early for, restaurant time and things like that. So, Mr. Fetch would like to say something, unless you have a question for me.
Should we speak to Mr. Fetcher about the metrics, like how many bar seats, how many table seats? Is that for him or for you?
I mean, it's me, it's 40 seats total.
40 seats total, but how many at the bar
Well,
itself?
there's 25, it's a 25-foot bar, and part of it's going to be used for service anyway, so
Actually, pictures.
maybe 8 or 10.
Okay. And the bar will be used for people eating also?
Yeah, I mean,
Like Felicia's?
Yeah, personally, I like to sit at the bar.
Yeah,
and
that's
have
what I'm
dinner.
asking.
Yeah, and
That's
people,
what I'm asking,
we
too.
expect a pretty
They
good.
could technically just be dinner counters, too.
Yeah, and we, like I said, we expect a big takeout business. So if someone wants to come in, it's pretty good food, so it's not like it gets whipped up and.
Same configuration that the cafe had.
Same, we're not changing the configuration at all. I was actually, when I went in this week, I was actually surprised at how small it was in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, currently right now, based on the photographs provided, there are 7 bar stools at, the bar. Not stools, high-top chairs. Maybe they could fit one more, but.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really gonna be for the takeout business, and someone wants to come in and have an
Understood.
appetizer at the bar.
Okay.
So the physical dimensions of the existing bar aren't being changed from the prior tenant to the current tenant?
Nothing is being touched. It's just the place is being, the motif is gonna change, but the layout is gonna be exactly the same as now.
And the lapse in occupancy expired the allowance for the prior configuration? Is that what you're saying?
No, so what happened was, because the prior tenant, we took so long to evict them,
Yeah.
because the city court judge was trying to make this deal happen, which it did. He kept pushing off the trial date, for the right reasons. Because it got pushed off so long, the time they applied for the application with the city, 9 months had passed from when the cafe stopped operating in the city's eyes. And due to that 9-month lapse of not being open, it triggered us having to come back here and apply for the bar again.
6 months. After 6
Was it
months.
six?
So it's a 6-month thing.
Is it six?
So there's an
I
expiration.
believe it's 6 months, but if it went 9, it's beyond the 6
Yeah,
months.
okay.
Understood.
We were under the understanding it was 9 months. They were unaware of
Maybe
it.
maybe I misspoke. I
Yeah.
believe it's 6, but it could be 9. I could be wrong.
They were completely unaware of it, and like I said, they had no reason to even do this doing due diligence, because the liquor license for the cafe was still in effect right up until the day they closed, so that everything was open. They just weren't operating because they had no money. And the eviction took an extra 4 months because of these negotiations. And like we said to the neighbors the other night when they asked us about the bar, we said, look, part of this value that they paid for this was because of the bar. It has value to it, obviously.
Okay. Before Mr. Apple leaves, anybody have any more questions for him? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Ken, you said your client wanted to come up and speak?
Yeah.
No, my client's not here.
I'm sorry?
My client was caught on a flight because of the weather. She didn't make it.
Oh, okay.
I believe it was something.
Okay.
My name is Paul Fetcher, F-E-T-S-C-H-E-R. I reside at 516 West Beach Street, which is by Washington, and it's a very nice walk from there down to what was formerly the cafe. They're eating cats and dogs. What happens when misinformation gets out there? And apparently, I have heard from the West End Neighbors Association that there was a fair amount of misapprehension about this new concept and what it will be. I think it's more important that we stress what it will not be. The previous tenant in that space did far more alcohol than food. It was about a 70-30 ratio, 70% alcohol, 30% food. With the new operation, we expect that to be reversed, to be more about 80% food, 20% alcohol. The prior tenant had live music in there regularly, a couple of nights a week. The new tenant does not propose any. It appeared, as I read the posting for this meeting, was about a new bar. And there also is some misinformation that this had been a dance studio and that therefore the bar had been ripped out and now we're trying to sneak one back in. That also is inaccurate. The bar has been refaced. It's more attractive than the old bar. but it is the same size bar that has been approved in this space. The space adjacent to this is where the dance studio took place. So we have people that are skilled in food service, very skilled, and we certainly would invite all of you to come down, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy the basically Peruvian cuisine that they have. I've been there for a tasting, and it's extraordinarily good food. I like to pride myself on having already done 12 deals on this barrier island for restaurants, and I'd like to think that every one is a better restaurant than the previous tenant in that space. Therefore, we would ask that you re-grant the approval for this to be a bar at this location, which will be certainly suitable for dining. There are two very strong changes, we said. My homepage is restaurantexpert.com, so I do a lot of work with restaurants. Two biggest trends in restaurants are A, people dining alone. A businessman on a trip, my wife goes out with her girlfriends, I'm left alone. At that point, individuals dining at a bar is a real rising trend. The other big trend is women, an all-girls night out. And this is something that they'll be catering to. I assure you, Amanda, who's formerly a vice president of Federated Department Stores, is very aware of marketing, and she will do a fine job and be a great addition to this community. So with your approval, we're going to have another good restaurant in town. Thank you. Any questions?
No questions from the board? No?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, would anybody from the audience like to come up and speak in favor?
Hello, members of the board. My name is Katura D'Amato. I'm Katura, K-A-T-U-R-I-A, D apostrophe, capital A-M-A-T-O. I'm an attorney. I'm also a member of the Town of Hempstead Board of Zoning Appeals, but I'm really here mostly as Amanda's friend. And from time to time, she asks me questions throughout this process, given that she knows that I've been doing this for a while and I've sat in the seat you guys are seated in now. The primary thing I want to just say is I know how serious board members take this position. I know how hard it is to do what's right for everyone involved, because I do the same thing. And I just want to assure you that when Amanda came to me telling me her husband died during COVID, she has two small kids, one's an 8th grader at Long Beach Catholic, one's a sophomore at Kellenberg, and she started telling me about this small business she wanted to get into with her good friend who's an established restaurateur. The food is excellent. She, of course, bounced things off of me. And in that process, the things that came up always, which I'm sure what comes up for you guys whenever you have restaurants and or alcohol near residential neighborhoods, is always the same. Loud music, too much alcohol, too many people. In my case, we got a lot of parking issues, and bad actors, and all that comes with that, especially when it's adjacent to residential neighborhoods. And I went through this with Amanda throughout this process, explaining to her, Amanda, if you want this, if you want that, they're going to care that you're not having loud music, that you're not amplifying it, that you're closing down at 10, that you have more chairs for food than you do for alcohol. And as you heard, obviously, Mr. Apple very competently explain, their occupancy is 49. They're going to have several employees. Amanda goes to bed earlier than I do, and at my age, I go to bed pretty early. She's planning to be out of there by 10, but she also knows she's got to manage the place. This is in no way, this is a restaurant that happens to have a bar, and as Mr. Apple went through with you guys, the technicalities that led to having to seek this approval again, but they've given you all the facts. Amanda couldn't be here because she's stuck in the air because her plane was delayed. So I offered to come down and explain to her, because I was there throughout her process of making sure that she structured this as a community small business that is here to provide food. She hopes to maybe cater to some of the beach folks. She's getting involved with the Catholic school to be participating in there. She already joined the Chamber of Commerce. And this is really about her going back into the workforce in a small business in her community while being able to be home and take care of her kids when they need her. So I really just wanted to come and tell you, she really has, I've really tried to help her along the way, recognize how important being a good member of the community is and how much you guys are going to care about that and really need to know that that really is what this is about. And it's not about another loud bar that's going to cause too many people drinking too much alcohol and not eating and making too much noise. So I really am just here as Amanda's friend and to assure you that she has really taken all those things into consideration, because I really impressed upon her how important it is, because when I sit in your seat, that's what matters to me, trying to take care of the applicant and the community, everyone involved. And it's much harder. No one out here probably knows as hard as it is as I do, because I know what you guys go through in trying to balance all the interests and do the right thing. So that's all I have to say.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since you used to sit here.
I still do,
Right.
in the town.
Would you be, agreeable to a time restriction in terms of the variance? So in other words, that we would grant the variance, but it would be restricted to 10 o'clock at night?
Well, first of all, I'm not in a position to do that, and I know you're probably aware that generally the courts frown upon that, but if that's something that the board would like to ask Amanda and council to agree to, I do that too, so I understand where you're coming from.
If you were sitting here,
If I was
would you
sitting
be
there?
asking for a time restriction?
If I was sitting there, I might be asking, well, first I'd want, as you have, the representations of the parties involved, that in fact you intend to close at the this and the that.
But they're unsworn. They're unsworn
Oh, you guys don't
representations.
swear in,
But
that's
go ahead.
right. To be honest with you, we used to do that, and the courts frowned upon it. Now, granted, you can ask them to agree to it, but in the end, it's not actually probably enforceable if it's taken to court, because even if you ask them to agree to it, the fact that it seemed to be a condition of a grant, then they don't interpret that as an actual consent. I probably wouldn't, but again, we swear them in, so representation, you know what I would probably do? Put a condition in. Oh, you can't really do that.
Right, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Should we put a time condition in? If you were sitting here, would you ask them to put a time condition in?
I wouldn't, because I don't think I can, but I understand your wish to have that. I think that the representations, so it's hard for me because I know they mean it, but you don't. I get that. But the kitchen closes at 10. All kitchens really close at 10. There is no music, and that's a representation, other than maybe some acoustic from time to time.
So would you put a restriction in saying no music?
Well, when we do it, you can't have the kind of music they're not having without a cabaret, more than 3 and amplified. So usually, if they're not asking for a cabaret, we already covered that. Like, you know what I'm saying? So if you come before us and say, we're not asking for a cabaret, we might have a jukebox, we might have an acoustic in there, that's already kind of covered in that you didn't ask for cabaret, so we already know you're not amplifying the music. But I think what's important is, like, I think one of you counted 7 or 8 seats at the bar. That's not changing. They have an occupancy of 49. 7 employees if they're cooking in the kitchen, if you're cleaning. And when you have tables, you can't have as many bodies. So if you have, whatever it is, 10 tables, I get the time thing, but again, as Mr. Apple mentioned, there's also an agreement, and you can probably provide it. From my understanding, there's an agreement in the lease for the premises because there are residences above. So per their contract, they can't make noise after, I think, Mr. Apple?
Contract doesn't run with the land.
Understand, this is something in the lease that I negotiated for them with the landlord.
That's right.
Directly under apartments.
But it doesn't run with the...
The noise restriction is, we're not gonna have any music.
It doesn't run with the land, but I'm curious because, again, I'm not familiar with all of your ordinances. I really came more as Amanda's friend, and I have just tried to impress upon her the importance of the most important things like the noise,
Yeah, but
the
you made
alcohol.
representation that you sit on a board. So
Yes,
I'm
I do
asking
on the
you-
town of Hempstead.
Right, so I'm asking you, on the town of Hempstead board, would you have considered a restriction in terms of time?
We can't.
Okay.
I mean, it's not enforceable. From what I've learned on my board, that's the position that council to my board takes.
Okay.
And we do sometimes ask things. We do put in, when we do the little community fairs and stuff like that, we tell them they have to have their music over. The street fairs, music has to stop by 10 each night. So we do put a noise restriction there, music time. Again, I don't know if music's the issue as much as, well, what do you think the time restriction needs to be on? Music or?
I didn't ask that. I just asked if you were sitting here, would you turn around and ask
for a time
there should
restriction?
be a time restriction?
On
that
what
was
thing?
my only question. You're
But
reading way too much into what I'm asking.
But a time restriction on what?
Time restriction in terms of operations. That operations stop at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I think that's early. I think the food stops at 10, and I imagine people will stay till 11. And I don't think it's enforceable, but I might be wrong. My counsel to my board takes the position. We used to do that. We used to make laundromats close. They want to be 24 hours. One got overturned, so my board generally takes. We do from time to time ask people to agree to conditions like owner occupied, but we don't impose time anymore because my board thinks it's unenforceable. Anything else? But I really am just here to say she does, I did try to explain to her, these are the important things and these are what matter. And I know you guys have to deal with that.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in favor? Would anybody like to come up and speak against?
Mike Delory, 6 June Walk, Long Beach. 6 June Walk, Long Beach, New York. Can I present this to Ms. Lynch for each member of the board and yourself? Joint copy for each and yourself for the record. This is a qualified statement, meaning, as Mr. Markowitz would see when he gets the sheet, I'll scroll down to this past Monday, the owner and council, to their credit, they invited everybody who had an opposition letter. What was stated at that meeting, and if I am incorrect, I'm sure council or the whoever was there could correct me. But what was stated was that the business will close at 10 p.m. each night. The hours of operation will be clearly posted. And I believe it was said that the owner represents music will only be piped. Below that, there's a landlord who leases the space both above and on all the commercial spaces below. We would ask that the landlord provide 2 parking spaces at the rear of the business. I don't know if it was discussed in the lease that was drawn up, but one for the manager or the owner and one for the chef. And the reason for that is some of you may not be aware that that location recently, with the addition of Sorrento's, is creating a parking nightmare from May to at least October. There is, I'm told, land in the back or in the southernmost area of the building. Space is available. They're not delineated. Doesn't say, tenant in 101 has this space, tenant 102 upstairs. There's nothing there that denotes that. It was an interesting conversation that Mr. Markowitz was just having about the hours of operation. And the reason I state it is because that was stated Monday night to the people that were in attendance at the facility or the proposed parking. So you approve from time to time variances with conditions. What I am asking the owner, owner's council, and including the landlord, because he drew up the lease, is to have some kind of additions of what was requested. Now, the reason why I asked this, and I'm here also representing the West Home and Walk Civic Association in a minor way. I can't say I'm speaking for the entirety of that group, but since I live close to the area, I'm speaking only for myself as the resident of 6 June Walk. Okay. I'm looking at the liquor SLA application. It was August of 2024, August 16th. And on it, which I believe this needs to be revised, it says, type of establishment, restaurant, full kitchen, full menu, fine. There's a box that's checked jukebox. It's also checked disc jockey. It's also checked recorded music. It's also checked karaoke. It's also checked live music, and it's just, you know, whatever, Latin and pop music, but it's just the box live music. It's also checked that there'll be security personnel here. So I'm trying to understand if it's only going to be piped in music, is this an application that needs to be revised? It's outside of your jurisdiction, I understand that, it's an SLA application. But there has to be consistency in what's being asked and answered here, so everybody knows where we stand. And that's, so the only reason I could put an opposition to this and qualify it is just for those reasons. I think these things need to be answered. Hopefully, maybe defer a decision tonight, or if you're comfortable with what was stated, then by all means, you're the governing body that, you know, reviews. But do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. Well, when you're talking about the music, it sounds to me like there's semantics involved, because they were saying it's strictly acoustic and it won't be amplified and it's not cabaret, which means it'll be 3 or less, or I don't know how that works. And now you're talking about, I think there's some semantics involved with how you're defining it versus how it was defined previously, but it does sound like it could be aligned. That's number one. Number two, parking. Has anybody talked to the landlord about this? Because that whole space has been kind of up in discussion for doing other things, and I don't know what type of commitment he'd be able to make. Has anyone talked to him about this request?
I think council or the applicant could
I just
answer.
want to say one thing, Mr. Delory,
Yes.
just so you know, sir. This board only has authority over, it's an appellate board, right? It's an appellate body. So the only thing that this board has the authority to decide is the violation, is what doesn't comply with the code, which is the bar aspect. So as far as if, you know, the neighbors met with the landlord and the landlord, I'm sorry, not the landlord, with the owner of the establishment, and she agreed to these conditions, that's fantastic, but I guess my question is, what's your recourse, right? So if, you know, in approving a variance, you know, we look for certain factors. Does it fit with the character of the neighborhood? Is it a detriment to the community? Is there a hardship, et cetera? So in us reviewing the variance for this bar, I don't know how these other things necessarily fit in. If the owner of the establishment wants to sign an agreement with you and then she doesn't honor it, what is your recourse? Because you're not an enforcement body. I mean, and if she's not doing anything against the code, what can you do?
So in other words, the statement that they'll close at 10 p.m. is meaningless.
Like, that's what I'm thinking about, right? Like, because maybe they have every intention on closing at 10 p.m., but let's say, you know, I go in with Barry and we're having chicken and a beer and it's 9:30 at night and we're there till 10:15 before we leave.
Well,
you know?
I think stop admitting people by 10 p.m. would be more reasonable.
The kitchen closes at 10
Because when people
p.m.
come in, it does take time to get them out sometimes. I've been in the business
having,
myself.
and I've had knowledge of their business as well, and you're absolutely correct. But there has to be a meaningful effort reasonable man effort, reasonable woman effort,
Mhm.
that you don't allow anybody in after 10 p.m.
That's-
But that's why we request that the hours of operation say what it was implied to be. If it's not posted, how would you know the hours of operation?
You know, one thing that I would suggest, maybe we do hold this, well, you all hold this application open for voting. Maybe we give the actual business owner a chance to confirm that she agrees to these things, and maybe you all meet with her and agree to the conditions that she, you know, and like, I know, because this is coming from you right now, and I know that you're an honest guy, you're not gonna, you know, make claims that.
Me?
No, I know that you're not gonna come up here and
No.
lie, and, you know, and say
Yeah.
things that are untrue.
Yeah.
But, you know what, I would
Former.
feel better before we placed any of these conditions on there if we just got, you know, some form of a dialogue and agreement, and maybe we don't vote tonight, we hold it open for 1 month, and, you know, allow everyone the time, allow the owner the time to get back to Long Beach, and then send us an email and we can talk about it?
Yeah, from what I understand, this is how it was conveyed.
Okay. I don't know, I
so-
wasn't there, I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah,
I like something in writing. You know, you say it, well, you sign it. Then what did you say? I mean, so I take people at their word too, but if I don't know them, I want them to sign
Yeah.
something.
I think that just has to be reconciled with us in a more
Yeah.
formal method, correct?
I just wanted to bring to your attention that it's a qualified opposition. If these things can be rectified, then that's what I'm looking for, a condition.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Would anybody else like to come up and speak against? For? No?
Mr. Apple, is there anything else you want to say in response to Mr. Delory?
Really quick, I think you touched on most of it. First of all, parking is not on the table tonight, obviously. It's not part of the variance. To go back to the landlord and ask for 2 spots on a piece of property that technically by right he has a right to develop in some form it's going to change the entire terms of the lease. This has always been a commercial spot. I lived on June Walk for a summer. I know Mr. Delory. Parking's tight, but I knew what I was getting into. I mean, it is what it is, unfortunately. You know, I chose to live in an area where parking's not a problem. So, and I'm not downplaying it. We did say, and we said tonight, our intention is to operate from 12 or 1 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. But as council said, you know, if we have 3 people that walk in at 9:30 that want to sit down and have dinner, I mean, to turn them down, it's just bad business. I think the hours really come into factor if we're disruptive. If people are sitting and eating chicken and having a nice dinner, nobody in the neighborhood is really going to care what time we actually shut the door. I mean, like I said, they're not staying open until 4 in the morning, you know, but to have a 10 o'clock restriction when maybe on a really nice night in the summer, they get busy and they say, hey, guys, stay open for another half hour. We have 6 people that want to come in, they just call. Regarding music, I don't know who did the application to the SLA. That was obviously done by an expediter. I think they just always check that. We're not having live music there. Again, it's 40 people. Could I say that we're not going to have a christening there and a 1-person guy's going to come and sing like we have at all our parties here? I can't tell you that's not going to happen, but that's not a big deal. You know, or an acoustic person that plays for people sitting in a restaurant. You know, the intention is not to make this a nightclub or a bar. I understand Mr. Delory's concerns. I appreciate it. And we did say the other night, as well as tonight, we do plan on closing at 10 o'clock. That's the plans. So, thank
I
you.
would just maybe adjust that language, that the kitchen's going to stop closing at 10 and stop, and maybe stop seating by 10 o'clock.
That's fine.
Just because, you know, I was a bartender and a waiter for like 10 years throughout undergrad and law school, so it's like, it's one thing to let somebody in and, you know, and not kick them out. It's another thing to say, I'm sorry, we're no longer seating.
Right. If somebody walks in if 4 people walk in at 9:45 to turn down four meals, when you're paying the rent, again, if they're going to stand there and stand around and drink, it's one thing. If they're sitting down and having dinner, it's not going to disrupt anybody in the neighborhood. You know, so. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kenny. Anybody want to make a motion, or are we leaving this? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, is it still open for public comment?
Yes, sir. Would you like to
Please.
speak for or against?
For.
Name and address for the record, please, sir.
James Lynch, 16 May Walk. I live down the walk from this proposed site. I was actually watching this at home and felt compelled to come down here. This business has been, this corner restaurant has been established for years and has conducted itself. The last owner, operator, was not a good tenant. Thankfully, the Iorios, and if you've been down by that property and see what they have done to fix that property, to bring life to that end of the West End, is remarkable. The fact that they found Sorrento's to take that spot and then move out to expand to their spot, okay? It's very important that people realize the need for a successful commercial district in the West End, in all of Long Beach. They are taxed financially higher than residents that they don't even understand. The point I'm trying to make here, this is 49 seats. This is not a nightclub. And what gets me is that they are filed with the New York State Liquor Authority for a license, and there's no time limit on the license. So for these people to try, and I say these people because Mr. Delory, with all due respect, my friend, to try and cornhole them into an hour of operation is ridiculous. These people are trying to open a business, and if they're anything like Long Beach Social, there is no nightlife. It's a great business model because people can't afford to keep their workers there that long. They land up closing earlier, unless you're going to be a bar. They're not planning on being a bar. They're planning on opening a small space with maybe a little outdoor cafe on a corner, and it brings great business to the west. It's the entrance, if you're coming from east, it's the entrance to the West End. That's the way we look at it. So I would ask you, and not hold it over. These people are trying to build this business out. They're paying rent. So the longer we hold this over for a technicality for somebody that had the business before, who never really should have been in the restaurant business, these people come with accreditation. They have 2 places already. They're an anchor to the community. You really should take consideration and vote on it tonight and allow them to move forward. This has been a restaurant. I've been here 23 years. It's been a restaurant a lot longer than that. And I give credit to the landlord for making the renovations and appearances to his property that really, if you've been down that way, then you'll see it is an enhancement to what it used to be. So I just ask you that, regardless of what was said before, Mr. Delory was here. He's saying he does and he doesn't represent the West End, the West Holmes Civic Association. I don't understand what that means. Either you're here representing them or you're here by yourself. I'm here as James Lynch, 13 years on the Chamber of Commerce, 5 of which I was the co-chair to it. So I'm asking you, it's important for me and for you and for the people of Long Beach to understand how important it is to have a strong business district. This is a 49-seat restaurant. So I ask you to take that into consideration and actually ask you to vote on it so that it can move forward and build it out and not lose any further money on rent. Okay?
May I comment?
Yes.
So I want to clear up a misconception that you have, all right? We are not dealing with the individual. We are dealing with the property. We have nothing against the individual, but the individuals come and go. The variance runs with the property. So when we turn around and we talk about conditions concerning the property, it has nothing to do with these individuals. If they leave, if they sell, if they go to another, if the property goes to another entity, the variance and the conditions run with the property. So what happens if the good individuals that we have here now sell to individuals who are not good? They are still bound by the variance of the property. This body deals with property. We don't deal, I mean, we deal with individuals, but our decisions affect property. You
Sir.
understand? So we're not, so I
Right.
want to make sure that you understand, we're not against the individuals.
No, I don't-
But we are dealing with real property.
I don't have a misconception. I'll remind you, it's been a restaurant for 38 years.
Right, but you also
So,
turned
so
around.
it's been there.
But you also turned around and you said that the prior owners were not good
Well,
owners.
you have good and you have bad.
Right.
Some people shouldn't be in the
But we're
business.
dealing not with owners, we're dealing with property. And we have to take that into account. Okay,
So,
we have to
so
take
I
into
don't, I'm
account
not
the
understanding your point.
reasons. So you don't understand my point?
No, I don't.
Okay, the point is, the variance runs with the property, doesn't run with individuals. Whether the individuals are good, whether the individuals are bad, it runs with property. We have to make decisions concerning the property. If we put a condition on a variance, that runs with good owners and bad owners for the good of the community.
I think what Mr. Markowitz is trying to get at, and I could be wrong, if conditions are placed, we're not placing conditions to hinder the current owners or to hurt them in any way. It's kind of like a compromise that if these owners, I don't know, maybe they hit, mega millions tomorrow and they move to Tahiti, and then they sell this to somebody who's not a good owner, those conditions would keep the potential next owner, who might not be such a good person, kind of in compliance with.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
counsel, can I ask you a question? Were there any conditions on the last owner, operator?
We don't have those records.
I don't know, sir. I'll be honest with you. And I'll tell you why. I've been the zoning board attorney for 2 years. I don't know, that's before
No,
my time.
my point is
No, I know
plain.
what you're saying.
My point is plain and simple. It's disheartening to see that people come up and try to handcuff a business.
We
To
hear you.
open
And that's
and
something, and
operate.
that's something
We-
to be considered, and that's why I recommend that
Okay.
the board doesn't vote tonight
However, I just want to...
and considers it.
I want to bring up just a couple of thoughts now that all this has gone on. I do think that we did hear it's not a cabaret license, which will restrict the fact it won't be amplified and it won't be abandoned there, right? That's number one.
Well, the cabaret license is actually what Ms. D'Amato was saying is something that they do in the town of Hempstead.
Yeah, okay.
That's
okay.
not
So-
relevant to here.
Okay, so thanks for clarifying
No
that, too.
problem.
On the parking spaces, and to Michael, even though he's not at the podium, right, I don't know if we could pull that off for these people in any reasonable time frame, because I know this property, it's kind of this chain link kind of thing with a funky gate, and it's not even paved, and there could be all sorts of insurance and other things connected. I don't see that as being a condition that we can expect these people to uphold to. I think it'd be nice if they went to our IORIOs and asked for that allowance to be friendly neighbors for a temporary amount of time until they do something, but I can't see it as something that we can get
Well,
caught
can I
up
ask
in-
you this?
in locking it down for.
Was it expected of the last?
No.
Or the previous?
I don't have the answer to that.
No, it wasn't.
And it doesn't matter, but it probably wasn't, because we've
Right.
seen that lot go up for other things that were denied. So I would say that there's probably even plans in the works for right now, but it's not paved and it doesn't have the type of gate that a regular person can just
So
open
it's one
and
more
close. It's chain
unrealistic
link closed
expectation.
with a lock, with a padlock. It's not like that.
No, I know, but it's one more
Huh?
unrealistic expectation. This board, 8 months ago, voted on allowing Cabana, who I
understand
spoke
that.
for,
Yeah,
allowed them to operate without any parking. Why would we handcuff a business
I'm just saying-
struggling to start?
I'm trying to say I don't think we can connect parking to this.
Well, I'm glad, I think that's
Joe,
good.
do you have any comment on that?
So the only thing that this board has authority over, Mr. Lynch, right now, is the application goes into the building department, right?
Right.
They write a denial letter for the for a certain section of the code, that if it's not in full compliance, the commissioner has to deny it. The only thing that he denied this for was the bar. Even though the bar was there, it was his position and the city's position that because the restaurant was not being used for 9 months, that the prior variance was abandoned. So this is technically, I mean, this, I always say things I shouldn't. This should have been just approved as a matter of course. It should have been. But because it was deemed abandoned, and there are certain members of the public, whether you agree with them or not, that had concerns, and they also went and met and spoke with the owner, and certain representations are made. I want to make sure that the decision that this board makes is done for the right reasons, and that if somebody's happy or sad and decides that they want to hire another in-town attorney to come and challenge this board, that I have the legal recourse to defend whatever decision is made. But the only thing, the only authority that this board can decide on is whether or not the bar, whether or not the variance could be granted for the bar. So, to your point, focusing just on the bar.
Right.
It's not out of character with the neighborhood because it's been there for 38 years. It's not necessarily a detriment to the neighborhood because, again, it's been there for 38 years. As far as a hardship, you know, I would even go as far as saying that this isn't even a user-created or an applicant-created issue because they bought the business with the variance, and then because of something that was going on in the court with an eviction process, they didn't create this issue. So strictly just, you know, weighing the legal elements of it, I don't have a vote. But but it seems to me that this should be granted. But
So-
I also want to make sure that I'm not missing anything as well.
So,
if
Mr.
it's
Lupo,
strictly
can
about how
can I just, based on what Mr. Lupo just went into a lengthy discussion about this and what you laid out there were the facts that this board deals with, I am okay with making a motion to grant this application tonight, based on that letter and just dealing with that bar.
Second.
Should I leave?
Please, yes,
Get out of here.
Case number 3438,
Thank you.
application of Rosa Rosa Peruvian Cuisine Bar of 782 Hazel Place, Lynbrook, New York, and Arcadia Management of 77 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York, for a variance in the following section of the zoning code of ordinances of the city of Long Beach, New York. 9-106.14 new bar for a full-service bar with seating at 780 West Beach Street, Long Beach, New York, also known as Section 59, Block 6, Lot 235, on the Nassau County Land Tax Map. Commissioner Lees has introduced a motion to grant the application. Commissioner Markowitz has seconded the motion. Commissioner Alton?
I'll grant.
Commissioner Markowitz?
Grant.
Commissioner Lees?
Grant.
Commissioner Brooks?
Grant.
Commissioner De Pasquale?
Grant.
This application has been granted.
I want to thank everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh, the meeting's closed.
Okay, meeting's closed for tonight. Thank you very much, everybody.
Let me go turn off the,
Thanks for your support. And really, that was a tough one.
It shouldn't have.
It's harder than I thought it would be. It shouldn't have. That parking thing is not negotiable.
We don't have authority
It's a
over
dirt
any
lot.
of that.
Change the places.
I was cautious because of the lawyer, because I know the lawyer's going to be at the next